Hello. In this video, I show you how to migrate a VMware virtual machine to Hyper-V using Microsoft Virtual Machine Converter using two methods. In this example, I have a virtual machine residing on an ESXi host. Windows Server 2019 is the guest operating system installed on this VM. If you have VMware Tools installed on your VM, you first need to uninstall VMware Tools from the guest operating system. Open the user interface of the guest operating system of the VM you want to migrate. You can check the guest OS version. This is Windows Server 2019, and it can be used for migrations using Virtual Machine Converter. Go to Control Panel. Click Uninstall a program. Right-click VMware Tools and click Uninstall. Click Yes to confirm. VMware Tools is being uninstalled. You need to reboot the operating system for the changes to take effect. I can shut down the VM and start migration. You can see that VMware Tools is not installed in the guest operating system of the VM. This information is displayed in VMware Host Client and VMware vSphere Client. Check which boot mode is configured for your VM, BIOS, or UEFI. It is recommended that you use the same boot mode on Hyper-V for this VM after finishing migration. This way, you avoid configuration issues. My VM uses BIOS for operating system boot. Download Microsoft Virtual Machine Converter if you've not already done that. Once you have downloaded the converter installer, run the installer file. The installation wizard of Microsoft Virtual Machine Converter opens. Click Next to continue. Read and accept the license agreement. Then, click Next. Check the installation path. You can change the installation location if needed. Check the information and click Install. Wait for the installation process to finish. Microsoft Virtual Machine Converter has been successfully installed. Click Finish to close the installation wizard. A shortcut to the converter has been added in the Start menu. Click this shortcut to run Microsoft Virtual Machine Converter. The introduction is displayed on the Before You Begin screen. Click Next to continue. Select a machine type for the migration. I need to select Virtual Machine Conversion. Click Next at each step to continue. Select a migration destination. Select Migrate to Hyper-V. Read the notifications before the selected option. Select a destination Hyper-V host. In this example, the Hyper-V server is running on a local host. I have the converter and the Hyper-V server installed on the same machine. But Microsoft Virtual Machine Converter can also save a converted VM to an off-site destination host over the network. In my case, I enter localhost as the destination host. If you choose a remote machine, you can specify the credentials. Specify a network path to store the converted virtual hard disks. In this example, I store the files of the destination Hyper-V VM on localhost. Adjust the path accordingly. I set the path to localhost $VMS. Choose the type of converted virtual hard disk to use for the converted disk. Let's use a dynamically expanding disk, which is the analog of a thin provisioned virtual disk. I'm choosing VHD for my virtual machine. Go to the next step. Specify the source details for connection to a vCenter server or ESXi server. I enter the IP address of my ESXi host. Enter the username of the account with administrative permissions. This is root in this case. Enter the password of the specified user. Click Next. Select the virtual machine you want to migrate from VMware vSphere to Microsoft Hyper-V. I select a Windows Server 2019 VM. The VM is powered off in my example. Go to the next step. If a VM is running and VMware Tools is installed on the guest OS, then you need to specify the credentials to the guest OS. The administrative credentials allow the converter to connect to the running VM and uninstall VMware Tools. I have already uninstalled VMware Tools manually and shut down the source VM. Thus, I only choose the power state of the destination VM. I choose for the destination Hyper-V VM to be in a powered-off state right after migration. I can power on the VM manually. Hit Next. Define the workspace. The workspace is a temporary folder that is used to store temporary files during the conversion process. For better performance, this folder should be located on the machine where Microsoft Virtual Machine Converter is installed. Enter the path or click the Browse button and select the appropriate folder. Then click Next. Check the summary. Review the configuration details you have specified. If the warnings are not critical, you can proceed. These do not prevent conversion. Click Finish to start the VM conversion process. The VM conversion process has started. An error occurred. Read the error explanation below. The entry -1 is not a supported disk database. Entry for the descriptor. The line with this parameter is added to the VMware Virtual Disk descriptor after you install or uninstall VMware Tools. In order to fix this issue, edit the Virtual Disk descriptor. VMware VMs of the ESXi format use virtual disk descriptors stored as separate VMDK files. Locate the source virtual disk and edit the descriptor file. You can connect to the source ESXi host using an SSH client and edit the file. Alternatively, you can use WinSCP to access this file. In this example, I'm using WinSCP to access the virtual disk descriptor file. Enter the IP address of the ESXi host, the credentials, and connection port. Let's open a temporary directory on the local machine. In the right panel, browse to the needed ESXi data store. Go to /vmfs/volumes/data store. Open the source VM directory and find the virtual disk descriptor file with the VMDK extension. Let's copy the descriptor file to a temporary directory on the local machine to edit this file. Edit the VMDK descriptor file in a text editor. Find the line in the descriptor with the following content and comment that line by replacing the first D character with the hashtag character. The format of the descriptor is not violated in this case, and you have a string starting with hashtag DB as a result. The commented out string is not processed when reading the descriptor's configuration. Save the file when you're done editing. I renamed the original VMDK descriptor file to have a backup of this file. Copy the edited descriptor file to the original VMware VM directory on the ESXi data store. Go back to Microsoft Virtual Machine Converter. Click Previous to go back to the previous step of the converter wizard. Click Finish to start the VM conversion process. VM conversion has started, and there is no error related to the virtual disk descriptor. Wait until the VMware VM is converted to a Hyper-V VM in Microsoft Virtual Machine Converter. At the end of the conversion process, an error occurs and the appropriate message is displayed. You can read the converter log file. Errors can sometimes happen during the conversion. It's not a big issue. The point is that the virtual disk of our source VMware VM has been converted into a Hyper-V format. However, a new Hyper-V VM was not created automatically in this case. Click the link to open the directory containing a converted virtual disk file in the Hyper-V format, that is, VHD in my case. To finish the VM conversion process, I have to copy the converted virtual disk to a VM directory and create a Hyper-V VM manually. Then, I will attach the converted virtual disk to this Hyper-V VM. Let's go ahead and create a VM directory on the Hyper-V host. Copy the converted Hyper-V virtual disk file to the destination directory. Open Hyper-V Manager. As I'm using Windows Server 2019 as the Hyper-V host, I can open Hyper-V Manager from Server Manager. Right-click the name of your Hyper-V host and click New Virtual Machine in the context menu. The new virtual machine wizard opens. Click Next to continue. Enter a name for the converted VM. Specify the directory where to store the VM. Click Next. Select the generation of the Hyper-V VM. I choose Generation 1 in this example. My VM uses BIOS as the boot mode. Generation 2 is used for UEFI boot. Set the amount of virtual machine memory and enable using dynamic memory if needed. Click Next. Configure VM networking and select a virtual switch to connect a virtual network adapter. Later, you can edit network settings. Click Next. Choose the second option, that is, use an existing virtual hard disk. You need to attach the virtual disk converted before. Click Browse and select the virtual disk for the Hyper-V virtual machine converted in Microsoft Virtual Machine Converter. I select the converted VHD file. Click Next. Check the VM creation summary, and if everything is correct, click Finish. A new VM has been created. Thus, VM conversion is done. You can check and edit VM settings if needed. BIOS is used as the boot method, same as with the source VMware VM. Connect to the VM and start the VM to check whether everything works correctly after the conversion. Windows Server 2019 is booting as the guest operating system. You can check the system properties. My Windows Server 2019 VM was migrated successfully. Let's now look at a second use case and convert the VMware virtual disk to the Hyper-V format for VM migration in PowerShell this time. Before I proceed, let me quickly tell you about NAKIVO backup and replication and how it can help you protect both your VMware and Hyper-V VMs. NAKIVO Backup and Replication is a comprehensive data protection solution that you can use to protect all your workloads from a single pane of glass, whether it's VMware, Proxmox, Hyper-V, physical servers, NAS devices, or Microsoft 365. Backups can be protected against cyber threats like ransomware with immutability and encryption. Once a backup is created, you have multiple instant recovery options. You can learn more about the solution by going to www.nakivo.com. If you have only VMware VM virtual disks, or if you have a VM for VMware Workstation and not for ESXi, the Microsoft Virtual Machine Converter GUI cannot be used. When you install MVMC, some useful PowerShell commandlets are also provided. Let's use PowerShell to migrate the VM to Hyper-V. In the following examples, you can learn how to convert a VMDK virtual disk to a Hyper-V format disk using the command line interface and how to run a VM using that virtual disk on Hyper-V. In this directory, I have virtual machine files in VMware Workstation format. Let's convert this VM to a Hyper-V VM. Ensure that Microsoft Virtual Machine Converter is installed and check the converter installation directory where cmdlets are stored. We will copy this path and define it in the PowerShell command. Open PowerShell in Windows on the Hyper-V host. Import the MVMC clmdt module from Program Files with the command import-module c:\program files. Microsoft Virtual Machine. Converter \MVMC command. let.psd1. You can find all the commands in our blog post also linked under this video. The command was executed successfully and the converter module was imported to the current PowerShell session. Note the path to the directory of the source VMware VM. Go to the directory of your VM and list the files in that directory. cd:/VMware/win. Server 2019 lists the contents of this directory. Remember that a VM should not have any snapshots for conversion. This is the needed VMware virtual disk file with the VMDK extension. Note the name of the VMDK file as it will be needed for later operations. It's time to convert VMware to the Hyper-V virtual disk format. Run the converter in PowerShell by using the following command. Convert to MVMC, virtual hard disk. Source literal path. Create a destination directory if you've not created it yet. I've encountered an error. I have to fix this error before proceeding with the virtual disk conversion. This error is related to the configuration line in the VMware Virtual Disk descriptor. This line was added after installing VMware Tools. Editing a virtual disk descriptor in the VMware Workstation format is more difficult than editing in the ESXi format. This is because the descriptor is embedded in a VMDK virtual disk file with disk data for the VMware Workstation format. You need to download a free utility kit to extract the virtual disk descriptor to a TXT file. You can then edit the descriptor and import the edited descriptor from the TXT file back into the VMDK file. The name of the utility kit is DSFOK Tools, that is DS File Ops Kit. Download the DSFOK kit. Extract the files from the archive, for example, to C:. Run the command line cmd. Go to the directory with DSFOK Tools and change directory. Run dsfo.exe with the following parameters. Where 512 bytes is the offset, 1024 bytes is the size of the exported data. Descriptor win 2019 x64.txt is the name of the file to which the descriptor is exported. The command was executed successfully, and the virtual disk descriptor was extracted to the txt file. Edit the text file of the virtual disk descriptor in a text editor. Find the DDB line and comment that bit out by replacing the first D character with a hashtag character. Save changes to the edited file. I now need to import the edited descriptor back into the VMDK file of the VMware Workstation format. In order to do this, run dsfi.exe with the following parameters. The command was executed successfully and the edited virtual disk descriptor was imported to a virtual disk VMDK file. The VMDK virtual disk of the VMware Workstation format is now ready for conversion to the Hyper-V format. Go back to Windows PowerShell. Run the conversion command once again. The conversion process has started without error. Wait until the virtual disk conversion is finished. A VMDK virtual disk has been converted to the Hyper-V VHD format. Now, we need to create a new Hyper-V VM and attach the converted virtual disk. Open Hyper-V Manager. You can open Hyper-V Manager from the Server Manager window in Windows Server 2019. Right-click the name of the Hyper-V host and click New Virtual Machine. The process of creating a new virtual machine is the same as I showed earlier in this video. Specify a VM name and location. Select Generation 1 if the source VM uses BIOS, and Generation 2 if the source VM uses UEFI. Configure memory for the VM. Select Use an existing virtual hard disk. Click Browse and select the converted virtual disk file. Finish the virtual machine creation process. A new virtual machine has been created, and it means that the conversion process is finished. Connect to the converted VM and run this VM to ensure that everything works correctly. The converted VM works normally. Similarly, you can convert virtual disks of the ESXi format after copying them to the local machine. Then you can convert them in PowerShell using the PowerShell module imported from Microsoft Virtual Machine Converter. The easiest method to copy virtual disk files of the VMware ESXi format is downloading them in VMware vSphere Client or VMware Host Client. The web interface is used for this purpose. For example, we need to migrate the Windows Server 2019 VM from ESXi to Hyper-V. Browse to the source VM in the Navigator pane. Open the Data Store browser and locate the source virtual disk of the source VM. Select the corresponding VMDK virtual disk and click Download. Specify a location on a local computer to save virtual disk files. A virtual disk data file and descriptor file are saved as separate files. VMDK and flat.vmdk. Flat.vmdk is a virtual disk data file, and VMDK is a virtual disk descriptor file. Wait until the files are downloaded. Two files of one VMware virtual disk of the ESXi format have been downloaded. Another method to download VMware virtual disk files from the ESXi data store is using an SFTP client, such as WinSCP. Enter the IP address of the ESXi host, port number, and administrative credentials. Connect to the host. Select the needed files in the VM directory on the data store and copy them to a local machine. Once you've copied the files, we can use Microsoft Virtual Machine Converter in the command line to convert virtual disks. Run the command similar to the command we used before. Ensure that the path and file names are correct. This error can often occur. The entry 1 is not a supported disk database entry for the descriptor. The strategy to fix this error is the same as we used before. In this case, both the virtual disk and its descriptor in the ESXi format are stored on a local disk on the machine with the converter. Open the descriptor file in a text editor and edit the DDB line to make it inactive by commenting this line. The hashtag character at the beginning of the line comments the line and makes the configuration line inactive. Save changes to the descriptor file, quit the text editor and go back to PowerShell. Run the command once again after fixing the error. Now the virtual disk conversion works. Copy the path of the converted virtual disk of the Hyper-V format. Create a VM and attach this converted disk to finish VM migration. I use the Windows Server 2019 VM with identical settings in this example. Use Generation 1 if BIOS is used for VM boot. The point is selecting the converted virtual disk. Once you have created a VM, run this VM to check whether it works properly. I have successfully migrated a Windows Server 2019 VM from ESXi to Hyper-V using PowerShell with modules of Microsoft Virtual Machine Converter. And this concludes our video. Thank you for watching. If you found this video helpful, click the like button and subscribe to our channel to catch new uploads. You can also visit the NAKIVO website to download a free trial version of NAKIVO Backup and Replication and try the solution in your own environment for 15 days.